This is episode number 523 of the Health Fitness Podcast, brought to you by InnerFight in association with Smith Street Paleo. Please do hop over to smithstreetpaleo.com. Check out all of the yummy goodness, paleo food plans delivered to your home or office, or all of the cool recipes that you can actually knock up yourself at home. Get over there now, smithstreetpaleo.com. Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, folks. And again, another quite special show here as we air out what was InnerTalks number 18. InnerTalks is an event that we have here at InnerFight monthly, every second to third month, interviewing or just hearing from people that have done something pretty cool and want to share their story. In InnerTalks 18, it was all about surviving the Sahara, where we heard from the four guys that just got back from Marathons Des Sables, a 250-kilometer self-supported foot race across the Sahara. I got the opportunity to sit down with these guys in front of an awesome audience and talk to them about their experience, what they learned, and then some really cool questions from the floor. So we're going to play that out in today's version of the podcast. I really enjoyed chatting to them, and I really hope that you guys enjoy the show. Thank you, everyone, for coming down, and I'm super excited to talk to these four guys, and I hope they entertain you the same way that they've actually entertained me for the last sort of 6 months, so it should be good. Just to give you guys some background on the race that we're going to speak about, Marathons Des Sables actually started in 1984 when a gentleman by the name of Patrick Bauer, who his profession was actually organizing concerts, he went into the Sahara Desert on a little bit of an exploration, and it took him about 2 weeks. He covered about 350 kilometers the first time he went there, didn't find any water, and basically had quite a torrid time. When he went back, he reflected on it and thought it would be a good idea to organize a race there. And that's how Marathons Des Sables started. 2 years later, there was about 25 people that ran 250 kilometers or thereabouts over 6 days through the Sahara. So the race has been going since then, and it now has around 1,000 to 1,300 competitors run each year. It is one of the most incredible experiences, as we're going to hear. It's also one of the most brutal parts of the Earth. There's certain parts where you don't know if you're on Mars or if you're somewhere else. So it's quite a unique race. And that's why I think in the world of running and of ultra running, it remains one of the most celebrated races. They say it's the hardest. I actually believe that it's one of the hardest, but there are other hard races out there for different reasons. So it's very difficult to say which race is actually the hardest, but it's definitely one of the most iconic ultra races. Around in 2000, towards the end of 2017, Rickson actually came to me and said he wanted to run the race. So he was going into this with one Marathons Des Sables finish already under his belt. I have no idea why he wanted to go back again, but we'll hear all about that. And obviously he's quite a good salesman, and he sold it to these three somehow. I'm not sure if he sold it to them or sold it to their wives. I think next on board was this handsome guy, Vikram, who we'll speak a little bit more about later. Akbar then jumped in, and he's got some big plans to share with us later. And I think it was almost a family connection that got Carl, the young pup of the crew, involved. I don't know if you bullied him or not. But guys, what you've done, first of all, I just want to give them massive congratulations. Obviously, they all finished. What I'll do is I'll just shoot them a few questions, and then we'll leave some time at the end. I'm sure a lot of you have different questions as well. So I think it's quite interesting to start with you, Rickson. Why on earth did you go back to this race for the second time? Is that on? Up.
It works different in the desert. So sorry. Okay, so I think the first year I decided to go and do this, I was going through a path of change for myself. And I had a really nice experience with the Marathons Des Sables, but the long day, which was in 2018, 86-kilometer stage, one of my tent mates who we aligned ourselves with said, okay, we're on the same sort of a time that we keep with our race. So we said, let's just do this long stage together. The good thing about that guy was he pulled a lot of people with him. So if anyone was failing, he just dragged them with him. The not so good thing is I didn't get a quiet moment. I was told about these dark places your mind will go into, and the 86 kilometers was really just us talking about a lot of food, the whole trip. So the reason I wanted to go back there again is I really wanted to do the long stage alone. And I think that was the primary goal for going back to Marathons Des Sables this year. Yeah.
Amazing. Vic, I remember the first time you came to Track Tuesday and you told me that you weren't really into running much. You'd run like maximum 10 kilometers. A month later, Rickson had conned you into signing up to MDS. What happened in that month?
Yeah, can you hear me? It's just something I wanted to... Running was never really my strong point, so it's just something I wanted to step outside the box and see how much I could challenge myself and how much I could push myself for running. Also, the way Rickson sold me MDS, said there would be lots of good food and stuff like that. Well, it definitely wasn't.
We'll come on to that later. Akbar, before you left, a few days before you left, you made a really quite strong and emotional post on Instagram. Talk to us about why you signed up for this year's race.
For me, it was the beginning of a journey in terms of where I wanted to go on my fitness level. And especially when I joined InnerFight, I could see where I was going in terms of my mental strength and my physical strength. And I needed a challenge to really push myself from that perspective. And Rickson had been talking about this race, and I actually never run before. Maximum I'd done was maybe 110K. So for me, it was completely getting out of my comfort zone and getting to doing something that I never even thought about. And so that was on my own journey. But then other things started to come into play. My wife and I have a charity that's very close to our heart. So that became a compelling reason for me to link those together and run for my charity. And then, to be honest with you, the video that I made, the training that we had done going up to that point, which was about 4 or 5 months, the training has brought a lot of my, inner strength out and what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. So that video was basically a combination of the training journey that had gotten us to this point where we could do something like MDS. And I felt going into MDS, you would only succeed if you had certain objectives in mind. Like how Rickson said, he went back because he wanted to do the long stage by himself. We actually have a great story about that we'll get to. But I think it was important going into that you defined exactly what you wanted to get out of the race. And that's why I did that video.
Awesome. Carl, were you bullied into this by Rickson? Why did you sign up?
I think the day before I signed up, Vic was every second of the training is like, are you going to sign up? Are you going to sign up? Are you going to sign up? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. So yeah, eventually I did sign up. But I was actually going to sign up last year when Rickson did it for the first time. But then this year I was like, why not? Since I have these two as well doing it, might as well go in and do it and get done with it.
What were you expecting, mate?
I knew it was hard because I constantly spoke to Rickson about this. It's something, what was I expecting? It is something challenging. Like, I didn't have a good enough reason not to do. I've never done a marathon. I've always done 10Ks of standard chartered. And I was like, might as well, do this and, ultra running. I've never done it. I mean, the first time I asked you, I was like, what is the hardest part? And you told me, running is the easiest part. The management is the harder part of it. So during the training, it's there's so many, to make the most of every minute. That's what I learned from the whole experience, from the training till I finished MBS. Because it gets hard when you're running during the day. And the only thing you can do is just keep moving forward. Because Like, I remember looking at it, I'm like, I should stop, and I'd be like, dude, this is hard. And he'll be like, yeah, bro, let's just go. And yeah, that's how we completed, I think, MDS.
Awesome stuff. Rickson, for you, mate, going through the training the second time, you'd been through this the year before, you knew what it was like, you knew the challenges. What was it like the second time round? Did you ever sort of start running and thinking, why am I doing this?
The company was just amazing. No, all jokes aside, honestly, it was very different for me training with the guys this time, because when I took it up in 2018, I was pretty much every single run of mine was alone. So I got through a lot of audiobooks, and I got through a lot of podcasts, and I got a lot of me time, and I got a lot of videos out as well. This time around, it was really interesting because there was so much of energy that was, that we were feeding off of each other. It was just, it was a whole different experience. The race on its own was absolutely, an entirely different experience from 2018. Just from the outset of being in a tent where where you form 50% of the people in the tent already. There are 8 people that are in a designated tent, and the 4 of us formed the brown zone, or the chocolate to the Oreo cookies, as they called it. Anyways, there's a joke about that too. But so the 4 of us were already there. So there was this energy that was, already, we were familiar with each other. And the other guys in the tent were, they added to the camaraderie of it. But it was a world of different experience. I also know, as a result of 2018 and 2019, that I've made my peace with being done with MDS. I don't expect to go back there to seek
a very happy person in the front row.
I just said MDS though, yeah.
Akbar, you started training with me sort of first. It was about October time, and you're a month or so ahead of these guys. Talk to us a little bit about the early parts of training, how not being a runner, how you felt, and how that process went for you.
Yeah, that was really interesting because I hadn't done any running before, and the way you set up the program was to initially introduce me to running and get me to start doing smaller distances and then accumulating the distances. But it was interesting for me how I found out that running for me became what can you do next, how you can get to the next number, and that became the journey in itself. So I did 10K, then I did half a marathon, then I did marathon, and I started extending myself over the numbers, and each number became a challenge in itself. So the progression of it really worked into my favor, because I knew eventually I'll have to go do this multi-stage race where you're doing so many distances on so many days. But it was the progression that really helped in terms of ticking off the numbers.
So it was easy. Good.
Yeah.
Vix, to me, and generally I think to people, you look like the kind of guy that likes the nice things in life and comfort and all this kind of stuff. And I remember explaining to you certain things that you wouldn't be able to have in the Sahara. Talk us through your experience about doing without things, and maybe the time you lost your shit in the Nissan out in Al Qudra.
Okay, yeah, so the toughest part for me was just the management, the whole management of the race, in terms of, you got to make your food, and that was not really the issue. It's just, everything had to fall into place. So you had to put your water in the stove, and then you got to light it, and then you're eating, and then the spoon drops, but you don't know if someone's peed there, and it's just all that management. And you just got to learn to let the little things go. Like there was a sandstorm, and your bag is just completely filled with sand. You're brushing your teeth, and it's just full of sand, and it's just those little things you just got to learn to let go. Yeah.
I think at one point he looked at me with everything that was going on with the situation and sandstorm, and he's like, I really appreciate that song, Let It Go now.
I was like, I have that song in my mind. It's just you got to let things go. And
but mate, how did you, everyone packed their bags, but I think someone else packed your bag because it was quite neat.
Yeah.
So how did you go on the second day when you had to repack it with all that sand? Talk to us more about those small things.
So I had my agent, Natasha, pack for me, and she had everything, on the computer and computerized and everything. Yeah, the packing was, because it was my first time, I just started dumping everything in there. I just took everything as much as I can, and my bag reached 12 kilos. And I think on the second day, it was a 13-kilometer trek through the dunes. And that's when I really felt I might have taken a bit too much, because your back starts giving way. And
Just so everyone knows, in this race you have to carry everything that you need except water for the whole 6 days. So all of their food, that's why the packs at the start weigh somewhere. The lightest packs weigh about 7 kilos up to about 13, 14 kilos when they're loaded with water. So,
yeah, and when we went in the weigh-in, I was with Akbar, and they just looked at us exactly what you said. So we put our bags on this weighing scale, and as long as it was below 15, we were really happy. So I turned around and look at Akbar, and I'm like, yes, it's 12 kilos. And the French lady just looks at me, and she goes, oh, these guys have no clue what's going to happen to them.
But I think it's also like part of the management that I think Rickson already knew as part of the experience. When we did our final bag check-in here in InnerFight, we were at pretty reasonable weights. Like I was at 9 kilos, which was a really good weight to start the race with. But what happens is, especially in my case, when we got to the actual Sahara Desert, and the first night I was there, you have one day to like repack your bag and put your stuff in. That first night was kind of cold, and one thing that I still can't deal with is cold. So I kind of panicked, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's going to be really cold throughout the thing. I'm going to pack more clothes." So when I went into my final weigh-in, I came in around 11.5, which was, that's pretty heavy going. So that aspect of the race is something that you really can't prepare for. And I think one advantage of having done it a couple of times is you kind of know what to expect when it comes to the bag management and the race management part of it, which contributes to how you do in the race itself.
Rickson, you'd been on the start line before. What was it like day one? Talk us through that process. Explain to everyone what happens on day one of Marathons Des Sables.
So every day actually begins with the same AC/DC song, right? I think everyone knows this. That's the one song that's not on my iPhone, because we heard that every single day. Now, the starting point is really interesting. Day one, everyone shows up, 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever is in our race book. We get there, we know the terrain we're running on, because the race book gives us all that information. You have Patrick Bauer, who will basically address everyone in French. And whether he makes a mistake in saying what he does or not, his translator will repeat exactly what he said. So if he says, "Oh, we're going to start at 8:30," he says, "Oh, we're going to start at 8:30. No, it's actually 9 o'clock. No, it's actually 9 o'clock." So it's constantly just back and forth, and we'll say, "Okay, this is going to be a while." And you know what? The energy is very high. The energy is very, very high. I remember the first time. Well, last year when I did this, on day one, I was excited, but there were knots in my stomach. I just wanted to go. This year, it was a lot more calm. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed seeing the expressions on people's faces. You could tell who was doing it for the first time, and you could tell, people who are just sitting and looking around and say, "Okay, I'm taking it all in right now." Like, I saw the excitement on these guys' faces. I was so kicked, and I was a little jealous. I was like, I experienced this last year. But I wish I was going through this emotion again right now, but it wasn't there. It was like, awesome, we're going to start. We're going to gun through this and let the day go on. Yeah.
Vix, talk us through day one.
Day one was just the most craziest experience. Everything was just going through your head. You're like, okay, I'm not supposed to run too fast in the beginning. I'm supposed to go take it easy. I had no idea what the terrain was going to be out there. It was just complete nervousness. You're excited. You're standing with all the guys that you've been training for, and I think the first day you're just so full of energy, and for me that was like the most exciting time, the first day. It was just
it gets
like, wow.
worse.
Yeah, and then the next day was like, okay, I got to get through this, and then the pain starts kicking in, and it's just a complete mental battle from there.
Carl, what were your thoughts at the end of day one?
I'm like, thank God I got this done with. And I was looking at what more can I remove from the bag, because like they all said, the first day is like you go with 9, But just before the race, you start packing extra shit you don't require. So like my battery pack, I threw off the first day because it didn't work as well, quite fair. And a couple of other things I started giving off. So because my shoulders started hurting because I was like, oh, it's too heavy. And that's when you realize, oh, I didn't strap the bag too well. So again, it's like a lot of things you learn after day one. And then you keep debating, should I run or walk the next day? I think I should run because I'm like, oh, no, then the long day is there. I'll be tired by then. So that was more of the debate after day one.
For folks, the first 3 days of MDS, a lot of people say is a warm-up. The fourth day is a long day, which this year was around 70 kilometers. So guys, maybe Akbar, tell us what's happening in those first 3 days. Are you saving energy? Are you thinking about the long day? How can you create a state of mind that helps you get through? Because those days are also very challenging.
Yeah, it was interesting. In my case, I did exactly that because obviously I had a conversation with you regarding your experience. I went in knowing I was ready physically and mentally to race. So I went in thinking, first few days I'm going to just take it easy, take in the experience, keep my energy level, not go over too much, and then start ratcheting it up on the long day, and obviously the last day, which is a marathon. So that was the game plan. But as you know, with most challenges and most experiences, especially when it comes to racing, things change. You just have to be ready for all kinds of different things. So for me, what happened was the first day, I was fine. I was racing well. Rickson and I were mostly at the same pace. But halfway through the first stage, I started cramping. And I was like, wow, this is surprising. I mean, I don't usually cramp. But I think it was the excitement of the whole event and the fact that the Moroccan Sahara heat is very different. It's very dry, so you don't really realize, how your moisture is being sucked out of your body. And what they kept telling us from the day we reached there is like, take salt tablets. And you're like, okay, but then you realize that salt tablets are really, really important. You almost have to swallow two salt tablets with every bottle of water that you take. So my first day, I did okay, but I started cramping. So I was like, okay, I didn't really prepare for that. And then the second day was they put in 13 kilometers of sand dunes. So everyone going in actually, who also had a strategy like mine, started thinking about the fact that the second day has 13 kilometers. So it's a bigger challenge that most people expected. So in my case, what happened was with the 13-kilometer sand dunes, my backpack, which is 13 kilos, I was working harder to fight through those dunes. And so I was expending far more energy than I thought I would in the first couple of days. But that's what racing does. You just have to adapt to the different circumstances. And in my case, then what happened was, as I'm fighting through the sand dunes and I'm trying to keep my pace and everything, at that point I think I pulled something in my leg, and halfway through the third day, I kind of didn't want to accept the fact that I was injured because that just throws off my whole racing strategy. But halfway through the third day, I realized that there was something wrong with my right leg, and when I went and saw the doctor at one of the checkpoints, she's like, yeah, you strained basically a muscle in your right leg, and you're so zoned into the race. I just looked at her and I was like, okay, so how do you get rid of it? And she looked back at me and she said, rest. But obviously you're not going to do that. So that changed the dynamics of the race because now I know I'm injured halfway through. I still have the long day and the marathon to go. So it completely changed my perspective of the race from actually racing, conserving energy over the first 3 days, and racing to actually going through the obstacles the first 3 days, and now then realizing I have to survive the race.
Very cool. Rickson, I think you sent me a picture from the start line, and that was the last time I heard from you. All communication went off, which was a great rest for me. All communication went off. You only get one email a day to your family, although you can have a number of incoming emails. Talk to us about that and the disconnection from families, friends, and from the world.
So I think regardless of whether you're a runner or not, we don't realize we're living in this urban jungle. One of the reasons for me to go back there, or the attraction to go to one of these remote races or locations or where you're absolutely disconnected, is there is so much of stuff coming at you on a regular basis. How often do you get the time to sit and actually let it soak in? Form an opinion about things. Think to yourself. Like I said, my training in year one was a lot of time alone. And I think the difference in that and MDS is when I'm alone in Kudra, you still have access to your telephone. Everything's there. Now, the only reason you have your telephone is really to take pictures and maybe listen to some books or music if you want to, or just shut up and just, disconnect. It's honestly, the first time around when I went and did this, it was a game changer for me. It's almost like I had unresolved issues or even opinions that I had to create for myself from the previous 39 years of my existence, which I dealt with all at once. It was amazing. Going into it this year, I kept telling these guys, man, there's going to be this moment. And you know what? I didn't have the moment. Because I think I dealt with all of this stuff the last time around. But just the fact that we were disconnected, and as Marcus said, the highlight of the day was at 5:30 or 6 in the evening. It's almost like a postman walks around, a French postman walks around with a bunch of emails saying, tent number 4, here are all your messages. And they give you this really big stack of papers, and now one person's assigned the task of passing it around to the 8 people in the tent. And that is the one bit of reading, I'd say, that we would just, I must have read each message about 4 or 5 times, and that was just on that day. Even when you're done with the day's run, you're back in the tent, you finished eating, you're now in your sleeping bag. It's only 7:30 in the evening, you're already in your sleeping bag. The headlight's still on. And those, you slowly sneak in those messages and you're reading through them because it motivates you. It makes you get up the next morning and it pushes you along. But that disconnection absolutely is vital for me. I know once a year I need to get to a zone where I'm absolutely disconnected and just, let everything soak in. It was the most amazing thing for my soul.
Vix, for you, 3 kids, like 5 days without them, some people might say it's nice, but I'm sure there came a point where it was tough.
Yeah, it got really tough for me, but just like Rickson said, the messages from most of the people here was just really what actually got you up in the morning and said, okay, I can do this. A lot of times in your head, you get, these thoughts like, okay, I've come all the way here, I did my best, and it keeps on telling you, like, okay, you've done your best. It's okay if you don't finish it. But those messages are so encouraging, and they really help. And just like Rickson said, like, we'd read these messages at night, and you get really emotional because you have lack of sleep. And so I would read the messages from my kids, from my wife, from all my friends, and you'd step out of the tent, and then you're like, you're almost about to cry. And then I come back and read your message, and
not almost.
And I just cry. Because I didn't understand it, and I was like, I don't know why Coach doesn't say good luck, and I'm proud of you. It's just this code, and I was just like crying from reading it. But thank you for that.
We'll explain the communication issue another time.
Exactly.
Carl, you got through the first 3 days, and you've got the big day in front of you. How did you sleep that night?
Very well, actually. I was very tired from the past 3 days. So it was not too difficult.
Nervous for the big day?
Not really. The strategy was quite simple. Walk it for most part of it. And that's what me and Vic actually decided we'll do till we got to 50 kilometers. And then we decided we'll go to sleep. So again, that worked.
Talk us through that sleep at 50 kilometers.
So basically because we did that... the Al Qudra, you made us do that whole track of 50 kilometers. So I woke up in the morning.
I didn't make you do that. That was part of the training plan that you paid for.
Sort of. I mean, you kind of did in the morning. You're like, you will run 50 kilometers. So I woke up in the morning. The funny story is I woke up in the morning and I wanted to go talk to Rickson. And I was like, because he had the experience. And I was like, I just want to know that everything will be okay. I just want to talk to him because he's been through the long stage. And as soon as I come out, I see Rickson coming in the distance, and I was like, hey, Rick. And then he just shows me this hand, which just says, I'm silent for today. And I was like, out of all the days to be silent, why today? Like, why can't you just talk today? And so he took a vow of silence, but I kept on, going up to him, trying to talk to him. And actually, at one point, he had taken his sleeping bag out of the tent and gone away and packed his stuff. So I was like, he was out. And so I went up to Carl, and I was like, Carl, okay, we're going to do this. We've done 50 kilometers before. In our minds, let's get through 50 kilometers, and then we can stop, and we can eat dinner and stuff like that. So basically, Carl was my Wilson. So when you have, Castaway, Carl was completely my Wilson. Every time he went away, I just felt completely lost, so I had to find it. But that was our goal. Our goal was to get to 50 kilometers, and then when we got to that 50-kilometer checkpoint, we got something to eat, and then it was just because if you take a little bit of extra time, your body just starts crashing. And then Carl had taken a bit of a nap, so I said, okay, Carl, I'm going to go sit where the fireplace was. And I just completely crashed at that stage. It was just, that was really tough for me.
So how did you guys get back up to finish the stage?
So I went up to Carl and I was like, Carl, get up. You got to go. Natasha must be freaking out.
No, that was not the first.
Yeah, she
that
was.
Not the first time.
That was the first
No, that was not the first time. The first time, dude, get up, let's go. And then we were like, okay, yeah, we'll go to the next checkpoint. Next checkpoint also, he went to sleep for 2 hours. And that's when he comes, he's like, dude, Natasha's going to be really pissed. Let's go.
I was like, she must be freaking out. Get up. And I don't know what Marcus must be thinking. Let's just go and finish this race.
I was wondering why she was asking me why you were sat still. That's actually what was happening. But how is it though, guys? Because you made that quite light. Like, you just get to 50K, have a sleep, go the other. Like, it must have been a tough day.
No, it was the toughest day for me because the pain at that point was my knee was giving way, my shoulder was giving way because of the weight, and I had 2 massive blisters under my foot. So the pain just kept on rotating. And I remember when me and Carl were on that stage, every time I'd see a representative from MDS, I'd be like, do you have any painkillers? So I would collect painkillers and put them in my pocket.
He had 5 spares.
So I had 5 spares, so every 4 hours just popping a painkiller just to bring the swelling down. So that was really tough for me, that stage.
You were together though, and you were together right to the end. What was it like when you finished that long stage? Because it took you quite a long time.
What was it like? It was...
I mean, for me, it was quite emotional at that stage because I knew in my mind once I finished the 76K, I think I'm going to finish this whole MDS. Because that for me that kept on playing on my mind, especially on the 3rd day. I was 5 kilometers in, and we had another 32 kilometers to go, 76 the next day, and 42 the next day. And my leg was on fire, and my feet were on fire, and that's when I actually sat down, and I told myself, okay, look, we've got to break this race down into checkpoints. If you sit there and you think, okay, I've got that much more to do, it's just going to play in your mind, you're never going to finish. So at that point, you just break everything down into checkpoints, and that was like sort of the turning point for me.
Incredible race, isn't it? That when you've still got a marathon to go, you feel like it's over.
Exactly.
It's quite surreal. Rickson, talk to us about the silence, the writing on your hand, and the encounter with the French doctor.
Okay, so let me just clarify about what Vikram said. It didn't happen in the same manner as he did. For 3 days before, I said, guys, I'm contemplating going silent on the long day so I can just be with myself. And there were jokes about it, but everyone got it. And the only person that woke up on the long day and said, hey, Rickson, I got a question. So, and I knew, and the only reason I wrote that on my hand was for him. And I just said, vow of silence, not speaking today. So the moment he spoke for like 5 minutes, and he put a question mark at the end of it, and I just said, here. Now, we had this superstar in our tent, this guy called Rob Pope. We called him, the moment we saw him, we said, hey, look, Forrest Gump. And then when we read up about him, this guy was Forrest Gump. He ran across the U.S. 5 times in 18 months. And every day, or maybe every time we got back to the campsite, we had somebody from the media coming up to us, or to our tent, and saying, hey, is Rob here? We want to interview him. And the guys crack jokes about this. Listen, we're human too. Ask us some questions. We can do an interview. No. Now, the day I decided to go silent, I think everyone knows where this is going. I had this thing written on my hand, And the reason for doing that was, like I said, the biggest goal for me to go back to MDS was to do the long day alone and just to be with myself. So no one wants to be around somebody else who isn't speaking on a 76-kilometer stage. So this was really easy. It was almost like I had no deodorant on. I didn't. So while walking through the whole course, running through bits and pieces of it, getting through checkpoints, nobody spoke to me. And when they did, all I had to do was do this and say, okay, it says, wow, silence, not speaking today. And they just left you alone. So at one point during the first 15 kilometers, something happened. I couldn't swallow water anymore, and I threw up. And I threw up right when one of the marshal vehicles passed by, and there was a doctor in there. So instantly he pulled me to the side and he said, no, you're not going anywhere, stop right now. What happened? And I was like, wow, how do I explain to this guy? So I just showed him my palm again, and I motioned to the water saying, it's just water, I'm fine, go on. But later on I caught him taking a dump in the dunes, so we made our peace with our communication. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing about being silent the whole day was I found that not expending any energy, just being alone with your own thoughts, with your own mind, with yourself. Wow, it's amazing. It's almost like I had a reserve of another battery pack in me that just allowed me to go at a quicker pace than it was even imaginable. So I know that the race from the year before was, last year I think I took about 23 hours for the 86 kilometer stage. And I figured if I went at the same pace and we did 76 kilometers, okay, I'll get from 22 to 20, maybe 18. But you know, when you have nothing else to do but get through a course and no one's talking to you, all you got to do is keep going. It was amazing. I got back to I think the first thing that I said when I got back to camp at the end of the race, there was an American trio in front of me, and they were just walking. I was in the background, and I heard their entire conversation for like 20 kilometers. And there were so many points I wanted to jump in and say, hey, do you know what? I think I have something to share. And I just shut up. So the moment we got to the tent, the first thing I said is, guys, thank you so much for the company for the last 20 kilometers. I've been listening to you. These are my inputs on what you said. But it was honestly the most gratifying experience. And if I get into a long stage ever again, I think this will be my strategy. It would be to just shut up and just get it over and done with. I think a lot of people were happy about the fact that I wasn't talking.
Yeah, I wonder if we bring that strategy in other parts of your life. You were alone with yourself. You two were together. Akbar, where were you when all this was going on?
So for me, because of the injury I'd picked up on the third day, it was a huge day of reckoning for me, because I knew that I had to get through the long stage in the marathon on basically one leg. But I think they put the long stage there for a reason, and I think a lot of people go back for the long stage because, like Rickson said, you find out a lot about yourself in that time, because it just throws so many challenges at you. It makes you go into deep, dark places that you have to figure out how to get out of. And all of that basically happened for me because I was essentially on one leg. But it's a beautiful thing. You know, I can say that now because I've experienced it, and I kind of know why people go back for that, because once you get through it, once you get through over the challenges in a place like the Sahara Desert, you know, it's magic. Something special happens inside of you. And like Rickson said, you just realize there's so much inside of you that you can use in your mind and your body to conquer whatever is in front of you. And for me, the long stage was actually a culmination of the struggle that started for me a day before, when I realized that this race was about survival. And halfway through the long stage, I'm fighting, I'm struggling, I'm going through everything emotionally and physically, and you just reach a stage where you're like, wow, I mean, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this here, and this is incredible, and you just feel a sense of gratitude that you get this opportunity. It's weird. It's one of those feelings that you have to be there to experience it. And it was special for me, which is surprising to say when you're thinking, okay, you're suffering so much. But while you're suffering, there's beauty in that.
Amazing. Vix, going back onto your personal grooming issues, 5 days in, because you have a rest day, stinking, tired, how did you feel, mate?
Just like I said before, you just got to learn to let those little things go, and that's what was so amazing about this race, is that you just don't focus on those silly things. You don't need those things. You know what I mean? That was just, for me, one of the lessons that I learned, that those small things just don't really matter. You just put on your clothes, you put on the same clothes every day, and you get up and you just get the job done, and you come back, and everything's just so organized in that way. So that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I had learned. And it was in the first day that I realized, the first day I think we had a sandstorm, so literally the tent was basically on your face while you're sleeping. And you tell yourself, okay, either I got to get some rest, either I'm just going to let this bother me, or just focus on getting some rest, waking up in the morning, do what you have to do, and get the race done. So
incredible.
Yeah.
Carl, 42 kilometers, a marathon separated you from the finish line. Talk us through the last day.
So we started off with the intention that the last 5 kilometers we're going to go all in. We're just going to run and just like the fastest pace in the whole 6 stages. I say 5, sorry. We started off, and in the 6th kilometer, on the 10th, we had to go up the mountain. So we reached the mountain, and then me and Vic look at each other, and we're like, oh God, there's a waiting line to climb up. It took us just 1 hour just to go up and come down that mountain. So, and suddenly everyone was all about rules out there. You can't cut and you can't go around. Which was kind of fair because it was more of safety. But then we got through with most of the marathon, like in the time we planned. But however, the last 5 kilometers were hard, were very, very hard, because you knew you're finishing, and you could see the finish line 5 kilometers away. That's the worst part. So you just keep looking there, like, okay, we can do this. We got this. It's like, it's a lot of emotions. It was like, you just keep thinking of the last few days and how you've gone through it, and it was very emotional, actually. Like, when I reached the finish line, was just amazing, actually. Yeah.
It was more than amazing, mate.
Yeah. Like, it's hard to explain, like, that feeling. Like, I even skipped coming to the camera properly at that point. I was like, when you get the medal and you're just like, wow. Yeah.
Rickson, your second medal, did it feel any different than the first?
I stared at the first one a lot more than I did this one. The experience was very different from the last year. Remote takeaways. Yeah, there's a side of me that's saying if I did it the third time, I would change these things about it, but I don't see that. I think I want to take on something different. The reason I signed up for Marathons Des Sables is actually an interesting story. I was not a runner. I've been with InnerFight, training, CrossFit, and the runs that come into our training sessions on a regular basis are smaller intervals. And maybe the one odd thing I would do is I'd do 1 10-kilometer run once a year, for the Standard Chartered run. That's about it. And I just didn't understand the whole concept of, running for 30, 40, 50 kilometers for 6 days in a row. I remember Omar and Johnny telling us about this. I remember listening to you and Tom speak about this when you guys did it. And I said, why would you put yourself through that? And I had this conflict with myself about it. I remember going back home and telling Sangeeta, these guys are running for 250 kilometers across the desert. It is so stupid. It's ludicrous. Why would they do that? And she was like, relax. It's okay. It's not your journey. Chill out. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I went into my room. I sat down and I came back in 10 minutes and said, it's okay. It's fine. I registered. It's fine. And she was like, what? Okay. But the whole point was that I wanted to see what the experience was about. And till then, I'd never done a marathon. So the need was then to start running. So to that end now, I think I'm happy with where I am with the running part of it. But I also know that I've never really done any competitive swimming or cycling. So the mindset is more, let's take on something which I'm not good at, and let's just see how we can better that. So which is why the second time around the medal was great, but I don't see a third one.
Good. Akbar, the last day, I saw you on Instagram flying through checkpoints, not wanting to speak to anyone, just going all in. How was it?
Yeah, it was pretty incredible because everything that had happened before in terms of the long stage and coping with my emotions, getting through the challenge, finding almost a spiritual moment in the whole thing, I just wanted to run, and I was just like, you know what, forget what's happening with your leg. They've given you enough painkillers. Just go out there and run because the race is about to finish and you just had a great time. Just go out and enjoy it. And that's what I did. And I started moving, I started running, and then I think most runners will know I went into the run flow, and I just kept going, and it was fantastic, and it was a culmination of the whole journey that I'd gone through, and getting to the finish line, and everything that I experienced. It's for me has only reinforced the fact that I've basically stumbled onto something that I really, really love, which is ultra long distance running, because it brings out something in me that is really special. So for me, getting to the finish line of MDS is almost like the start of a much longer journey.
Danny, we'll talk after. Sorry. Vix, how was it crossing the finish line? Emotional, or you just wanted to get home?
No, it was very emotional for me. And just like Akbar said, I really enjoy the whole experience of ultra, and just seeing how much your body can do and how much your mind can push you to do things. So I definitely want to go along that path as well. And it's something
Sorry, Natasha.
Yeah. And I really just wanted to finish MDS to prove to myself that I can get this done. And something I thought that was just so impossible a year ago. So that's why it was just a massive turning point for me.
Amazing. I could ask you guys questions for hours and listen for hours, but I think at this stage, just give them, all four of them, a massive round of applause. What they did is absolutely incredible. We've got about 10 minutes. If you guys have questions, we'll pass around some mics. You can ask them. Carlin has.
So one of the things, I was there on your first training thing at Al Qudra, and you're all slapped with a bit of Marcus Smith reality on the first night. Second day was a bit tough. What would you change in your preparation if you were to do it again?
I basically would not get Marcus to cook that delicious steak at the end of... I mean, that was just, that was a big teaser. That's what I would change, for sure.
I think we'd put in more back-to-backs. I think that's it. Other than experiencing everything, going at a certain distance day after day after day, that's something very unique in itself. So especially if you're preparing for multi-stage, I think if you did more of those, like back-to-backs, I think that prepares you really well for that.
Just to let you guys know, the nature of ultra running is someone like Rickson finds it on the internet, sells it to these guys, they come and see me and they say, how can I make this fit into my job, my training, my wife, and in some of their cases, my 3 kids. And when I start talking about back-to-back days, training weekends, they're just like, no, we can't do it. But I think you're absolutely true, mate. The more time you take to do back-to-back training days and longer weekends, the better it does prepare you. Other questions?
Just to answer Colin's question, on my side, I think what I would do differently is I'd use my gear more regularly. So, for instance, we use the campfire and the coals from there to heat our food. I would actually use the stove that we would use at MDS because it tends to blow out a lot quicker over there than it did over here in the dunes.
So I'm sure while you're actually doing this, there is a big nutritional aspect to it as well, right? Because while you're going through the multi-stage races, you're going through the 70K, I'm sure there are stages wherein you know you have to eat, but there is just no way anything will go in. Did it happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, there was 3 people in our tent, 2 from the British military and one guy who ran across the U.S., the British Forrest Gump. And it was interesting to watch them because they've done so many marathons and ultras, and they just kept on eating. And you just have to keep on eating. And you realize that you lose maybe 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, but you just have to keep on consuming. No matter how tired you are, you have to make sure you put in those calories. And those guys just kept on eating. And even though I didn't feel like eating, I was tired, they were just non-stop. And so that's one thing that I would probably do different, is just to make sure I push myself to keep on eating, because it makes a massive difference. Even those 200 calories, 300 calories that you eat really does give you a massive boost. So, yeah.
And I mean, there's a science to it. Like Marcus and Tom, they've always said to us that nutrition is so important during the race, and you have to keep eating. You see it. Like for me, I saw the difference. Like especially on the last day, because I knew I needed to like really get through the marathon. I was eating more than the previous days. And what we usually did as part of our racing plan was that we eat every hour on the hour. But in the marathon thing, I started eating every 30 minutes. So I was eating more. And it reflected. My energy levels were different. So it's so important, like when you're doing these things, to just constantly be eating, because it makes a massive difference.
Hi guys. I just wanted to ask, so the solitude that you experience over there, over the stages, once you finish, what are maybe those first 24 hours like when you sort of transition back? You get your phone, there's obviously a flood of messages, Instagram, from obviously experiencing, and I'm guessing the positive side of being alone with your thoughts, to probably an overwhelming connection again. How do you manage that, and was that a smooth transition?
So that's a really good question, because you do go off the grid completely. A lot of people actually go back for that, like Rickson said, for that particular experience, because for 10 days you're completely switched off. People respond to it in different ways. In my case, when you finish the race, they take you back to that Uzazat, which is the first town, and they give you a hotel room so you can go have your first shower after like 7-8 days, and your first sleep in a proper bed. For me, it was weird, because I went into that room and I looked at the shower and I looked at the bed, and I was like, okay, this is weird. And I actually, one day after the race finished, I didn't want to connect. I didn't want to go back on the grid. I looked at my bag that had been with me. It's like reverse, like Stockholm Syndrome. I looked at my bag and I was like, I don't want to open this bag, because this bag has given me so much. And the first night, I slept on the floor. I didn't sleep on the bed. So it takes you time. Some people get back into it really quickly. Some people takes maybe forever. Yeah.
I'll address the technology part of it. I find life to be a balance. If you ask Sangeeta, my wife, she'll probably place bets that I'll become a hermit and live in the wilderness quicker than most of you would think I would. But it is a balance. I mean, we all have different roles. So I have a business to run. I am a husband. I'm a father. I've got, there are so many things going on at the same time. I could allow myself those 8 or 9 days of absolute disconnectivity, which meant that I would still come back after a run, and I would make a call to Sangeeta from satellite phone that they had available over there, just to see, is everything okay? Are the kids okay? Is everything fine? What was your day like? That's it. But other than that, there was zero business to attend to. But the moment we were in an area of reception for our cell phone, it had to start again, which I think is a good balance. I think I probably use it lesser than before. But as time goes by and as we continue to live our daily lives, I'm sure these things will start seeping back into your lives, you know. I don't see it as toxic, but I think there is a balance that needs to be maintained. And this was my way of dealing with it. So if you disconnect, sure. But now we're here in this life. So maybe get an opportunity to make this more frequent rather than have 8 days of disconnection in one shot. Maybe, you know, we do that. When we get out of town, there's zero work. So then it's social stuff that we're trying to balance. And, you know, my takeaway from this whole thing is the decisions have to be fewer on a daily basis. Do I not? Just, you know, it was easy. Like Vic said, we woke up every morning and we wore the same shirt. Today before coming, I was thinking, okay, should I wear this T-shirt or something else? We didn't have that problem over there. It was the one shirt you took. So you just wore the same thing every day. It didn't matter what it looked like. It was dirty. There was a stain on it. It didn't matter. But it's not the real world we live in. When I become a hermit, though, you know.
Congratulations. Amazing job. Especially together, I'm sure it was a special experience. But since you're together, I'm sure there's some feelings that weren't expressed, possibly in front of each other. So which one of you cried?
Oh, I definitely cried when I got, every night when I got
Which
messages.
one of us cried first, or which one of us cried?
So a few times.
Oh, I cried when Marcus's messages as well. Like I said, I didn't understand them, so I cried. But I mean, I cried when I got my kids' messages, my friends, and all of you guys. That was quite emotional for me.
And how was your first shower?
Oh, it was amazing. Like Akbar fell asleep on the floor, I fell asleep in the shower. Yeah, I think I used all the water from Uzzazat. Yeah, that was a great feeling, just to come back and sort of reflect and there, that was really a good point.
Awesome. Akbar, do you want to say something?
One thing I just wanted to say was, like, for us, 4 of us, it was obviously an amazing experience, and the support we got from our friends and family and people, like, it's really amazing, and it's quite humbling. But it does put things in perspective in terms of what other people were doing there as well. Like, you think you went there and you did an amazing thing, but there's some real legends out there, you know. I mean, there was a lady there who's running on one leg, and there's an 84-year-old guy who's from Japan who's been coming for the last 20, 30 years, and so you realize that, and the dog, yes, cactus, but you realize that, you know, there's some lot of special people out there, and it puts things in perspective, like in terms of where you are in your life, but there are people out there really crushing life.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. A final round of applause for these guys. Thank you.